Are you an empath? Or maybe you're wondering, what the heck is an empath? An empath is something that I talk a lot about on this channel and on my blog. And today I thought I would do a deep dive into the world of the empath. If you've ever wondered if you're an empath or if you're looking for tips on how to cope with being one, then you're not going to want to miss this, so be sure to keep watching. What's up, Starshine? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jen. I am a spiritual life and business coach. This is my YouTube channel and I'd love to welcome you aboard, whether this is your first time or your 15th time. If you don't know, I create a new video for you every week all about the art of up-leveling your life from the inside out. So if that sounds like something that you want to be a part of, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. As I said at the top, today we are going to talk all about empaths, including what an empath is and how to deal with being one. If you have followed along on this channel for a while, you have probably heard me talking about this before. So today I thought I would do a whole video to help inform you about what an empath is, in case you don't know, and give you some tips on how to cope if you are one. I think this is actually a really common thing to be, and this is something that I actually had no idea about for a very long time in my own life. And learning about what an empath is and learning the skills to cope with being one has really helped me out tremendously. And so I hope that the tips in today's video will help you out in the same way. So let's kick things off by first discussing, of course, what is an empath. And as you might have guessed from the very word itself, an empath is just somebody who has a lot of empathy. But I would take that a step further and I would really define an empath as somebody who just can intuitively understand the emotions and needs of the people around them. So some people were just born with this as a way that they are, and that's the way I think I personally am. But some people come to become an empath as a sort of coping mechanism. So it is pretty common for children who have grown up in a home where maybe a parental figure was absent or maybe emotionally unavailable. Perhaps the child had to work really hard to understand the emotions of that adult so that they could perform in a certain way so that they could get the love that they craved. So sometimes an empath can come from this trauma background, and other times maybe this is just the way that you were born. This is something that you have been given as a gift. Gifts always come with a dark side. To explore in this lifetime. And I just want to say that either way that you have arrived at being this way and being this person, it is totally okay. So I'm not going to suggest that one of these is better than the other. I think both of these actually result in pretty much the same behaviors in adulthood. And I would suggest both kinds of empaths really still need to do a lot of healing work on themselves in order to become their best self. So whichever kind of empath you are, whichever brought you here today, I just want you to know that this is okay. In the end, being an empath is a huge gift. So this is a skill that a lot of people don't have. And it kind of gives you this sort of edge on social relationships in many ways, if you can learn how to have proper boundaries. We're going to get more into that as the video goes on. So just in case you're still wondering whether or not you're an empath, I'm going to run through some quick signs of being an empath right now. These are more of the positive signs of being an empath. I'm also going to run through the more negative signs in just a moment. But let's start off with the positive stuff. So of course, the first positive sign of being an empath is that you just intuitively know how to put people at ease. You understand, again, the emotional desires and needs of other people. So you are already very adept at sort of being different, saying the right thing, putting people at ease. This is where you really excel. And again, that can be such a beautiful thing. Again, not everybody has this skill, so you really have to understand that this is a gift that you've been given. So that is my very first sign of being an empath, is just having this natural ability within you. The second sign of being an empath is that people just like to open up to you and tell you their problems. Again, this comes back to the first sign. People are just drawn to you because you seem to just get them. So that means maybe you're just talking to somebody at a grocery store or maybe in a bar or something like that, and somebody will share with you some very personal information. That's because you make them feel comfortable, and they can tell that you kind of get them in a way that other people don't. So if you're that kind of person who's going through life and maybe your coworker at work is telling you stuff about their personal life, or some random person that you just meet is opening up to you and spilling their secrets, that might be because they are picking up on the energy that you already have. They can see that you are just this person who gets people and understands people emotionally, and that makes them feel safe, and that makes them feel like they can open up to you and share these experiences. So if people are always opening up to you, telling you their secrets, that is probably a sign that you are an empath. Sign number 3 that you are an empath. Maybe you were like me, and as a child you were told repeatedly that you were too sensitive. So of course that makes sense. If you can automatically pick up on people's emotions, if you're a little kid and you do something and your parents are upset with you, it becomes an extra upsetting event, because not only are you upset that you did something wrong, you're also upset because you feel like you caused your parents to get upset. So that can make your emotions extra heightened, and sort of create a snowball effect between you and your parents, which is not really a fun thing to have happen. But that can distress your parents as well as distress you. So if you were this child who was told more than once that you were too emotional, I'm going to suggest that that is a sign that you are an empath. Okay, so my final positive sign of being an empath is that you love spending time in nature. That's because you can get very overwhelmed by the hustle and bustle of city life, or just from having social conversations. So being in nature is such a refreshing way for you to recharge your batteries, and you have probably prioritized this in one way or another. So if you've always been drawn to going for long walks or hikes or doing some other sort of outdoor activity, I would really suggest that that might stem from you being an empath. That might just be something that you do as a way to cope with who you are and the way that you are in the world. And again, that is a very beautiful thing. Okay, so those were the positive signs of being an empath. I'm sure I can come up with more, but that's just a little taste to get you started on this. But now I want to kind of flip it to the other side and talk about the more negative signs of being an empath. So I already sort of touched on this, but I said that being an empath is a gift. But even though it is a gift and a very valuable gift, it also has a dark side, and it has some elements that are not so positive, let's just say. So I just wanted to run through these traits as well, so that you can kind of see if you recognize yourself in any of these. Because it's only once you can start to recognize yourself as being an empath that you can start to implement the coping skills that I'm going to give you at the end. So let's get into the negative sign. Okay, the first negative sign of being an empath is always putting other people first, but to the point that you get drained or that you start to be taken advantage of. So we always have a choice, and I know that an empath really wants to help everybody else out. But the thing is, if you keep giving and giving and giving and don't give yourself enough time to replenish your own energy, sooner or later you are going to run out of steam. So as an empath, that can feel like people are taking advantage of you, but that isn't really necessarily what's happening, because nobody can really understand what your energy levels are like or what your schedule is like or anything like that. Ultimately, it is up to you to set the boundaries, right? And we're going to get again into the coping skills later on. But it is really important, if you recognize this in yourself, really start to understand that this is a change that you need to start making in your life. It isn't up to the people in your world to decide where your limits are. It's up to you to decide that. So again, if you are finding yourself running around doing things for other people all the time and feeling super drained because of it, that is a negative sign of being an empath. The second negative sign of being an empath relates to what I was just talking about, but this is just boundary issues in general. Again, an empath really just wants to help everybody, but sometimes helping other people comes at our own expense. So it is really important for an empath to start to develop a sense of boundaries, because if we don't have a sense of boundaries, things are just going to start happening to us that we are not okay with. And that can be very traumatizing depending on what the situation is. If people seem to be, again, taking advantage of you in any way, that can, again, just be a boundary issue. And again, we're going to get more into that a little bit later on. But it's really important for you to start to understand this, that you can start to heal this. It's not about waiting for other people to start treating you better, because that probably isn't going to happen. This is a two-way relationship, and we teach people how we want to be treated. So this is up to you. The boundary work is up to you. And it is really crucial for empaths who have very flimsy boundaries to start becoming aware of what this problem is. The third negative symptom of being an empath is getting into relationships with narcissists or people with borderline personality disorder. So this is sort of the perfect pairing, two unhealed people coming together and sort of feeding each other the perfect recipe. So a narcissist is always looking for somebody to boost up their ego, and of course the empath is the person who is going to be really happy to do this. Similar situation happens with the borderline personality disorder. A borderline personality disorder person is looking for somebody to sort of keep up with them and to do the things that they want to do. And an empath is going to want to try to do that a little extra hard, and again, maybe to the point of draining themselves, giving too much, and this relationship that starts off where it feels so good. It feels so good when you find somebody that seems to just get you, can quickly turn toxic. These kinds of relationships, they can be romantic, they can also be friendship, they can be something even in your work environment. But I'd really challenge you to think about this. If you have a history of attracting narcissists into your life, that could very well be a sign that you are an empath. So that is something important for you to become aware of now. Another negative sign of being an empath is a real desire to want to avoid conflict. And oh boy, this is a big one for me personally. Conflict feels very foreign and very uneasy to an empath. That's because when we feel somebody's anger or frustration or whatever that is, we are taking it on not just as someone telling us that they did something wrong, but we are actually feeling that negative emotion, and it really doesn't feel good. So empaths can try to deal with this again by turning into people pleasers, or maybe by avoiding the conflict in whatever other way that they can figure out. So if that is resonating, again, don't feel alone in this. I have definitely been in most of these places. That is just really a sign that perhaps you are an empath, and that it is time to do a little bit of work on yourself. Another negative sign of being an empath is a tendency to get overwhelmed in romantic relationships. So of course, when we're in love, we really want to make our partner happy. But if you are an empath who has not worked on his or herself, this can result in you becoming overwhelmed. Say you live with somebody and your partner comes home from work and proceeds to complain about the litany of horrible things that happened to them throughout their day. This is not only just a negative thing for you to hear, but you already take on that negative energy. You can feel what they felt in the moment. You can feel so much of that situation that you are really going to want to do your best to help them with that. And that may or may not actually be possible because, of course, we can't do everything for our partners. And it is definitely not always in our best interest to go out and try to do things for people. However, the empath might feel a bit more inclined to do that, or maybe they turn into another way of dealing with this is by trying to control their partner in order to fix that problem. So again, all of these things can result in an empath feeling overwhelmed because basically they're taking on not only their own little world of problems, but the whole entire world of another person. This also might result in you avoiding romantic relationships or getting into them and then getting out of them really quickly. These are all things that can happen for an empath. So if any of this is resonating, this is really something for you to think on and really become aware of. The last sort of sign of being an empath is maybe getting tired in crowds, maybe needing a lot of alone time to recharge. No shame in that game, let me tell you though. Or maybe even a need to sleep alone. So again, energy is so important to empaths, and we might not really understand why we get so drained in a group situations, or why we need so much alone time, or why we prefer to sleep by ourselves. But these are all super common traits that empaths have. And again, that's because we tend to soak up the energy of people around us, yes, even while we're sleeping. So if that is the way you are, again, there's absolutely no shame in that. This probably isn't a negative trait actually, but it's just something to be aware of. But again, if you don't know what's happening and if you're feeling like something is wrong with you, that's how it can become negative. But if you know that this is just how you operate and you can figure out what you actually need in any given situation, that's how you can start to let this knowledge empower you instead of feeling like there's something wrong and that you can't cope with things. So again, all of this information I'm giving you, it's only here to inspire you. It's only here to educate you. And I'm really hoping that that is what you're taking away from this. Okay, so let's sort of wrap things up today with talking about 5 coping tips that I can give you for being an empath. If any of the stuff I've talked about today has resonated, then you definitely need to think about this. Again, nobody's probably taken you aside in school and told you you're an empath. You probably felt like a little bit of a freak sometimes. Maybe you couldn't even voice what you were feeling in a certain situation, and that can be really disempowering. It can definitely make you feel like a freak. So again, I hope that this is just helping you to recognize what is true within you, and that these tools can help you to create better boundaries and a better space for yourself in your life. Because again, being an empath is a gift. This is all a gift. So the way you deal with it, that is really the journey that we're on. Okay, tip number 1 for coping with being an empath. This is learning to always question what is yours and what isn't. This is something that I began to do a few years ago, and it has really saved me a lot of energy. I used to be this person where someone would tell me something like, oh, I'm looking to hire this person at work. And I would be like, oh, I can do that. Maybe I should apply, even though that job had nothing to do with what I wanted. I just got sucked into their need for something and I wanted to help them fix it. Again, it is really important for us as empaths to really be aware of what we are taking in and what is not ours. So if somebody is complaining and complaining and complaining about something to you, and you start to feel agitated and angry about this thing that you had thought of before but weren't feeling any feelings about, that is definitely you taking on the energy of that other person. That is not something that you had within yourself. So it is really important for you to start to understand the difference. And that's not to say that you're not going to feel these things. An empath is going to feel these things. These things are still going to circle into your energy, but it is just important for you to start this dialogue with yourself to figure out where things are generating from. When you can see that you are just responding to someone else's emotional needs and not your own, that will make it so much easier for you to figure out how to focus on yourself. Tip number 2 for coping with being an empath, again, to sort of build on the first tip that I just gave you, this would be just learning to take a moment before committing. Take a moment to check in with yourself. Take a moment, put things on pause, and work on your ability to say no. Again, if somebody is asking you to do something in the moment, the empath is probably going to jump to say yes, or jump to committing to doing something that maybe they don't really want to do. So I have personally found it very helpful as an empath to just give myself a moment to step back. And that could be from a social engagement, it could be from some professional thing, anywhere that you can build in a little space to take a moment for yourself is super important. Again, the empath always will feel the energy of the other person. So if someone is coming and making a big request, and especially the bigger the request, the more time you need, by the way. But if someone is coming to you with a request, you are going to just automatically feel that need, and you are going to automatically want to say yes and to help them with this thing. But it is really not always in your best interest to help everybody. And we just simply do not have enough time in the day, enough energy, enough hours left in our lifetime to do everything for everyone else. So if you're not good at saying no, especially, this is a really important tip. It's just to take a moment, give yourself the space you need, give yourself a moment to disengage from that immediate energy and tune into what you actually want. Tip number 3, this is getting cozy with the word no. Again, if you're an automatic empath and you're a people pleaser, you want to help people, that's just your nature. No is probably something that you have not really practiced saying. So I just want to remind you of the fact that you do not have to say yes to every request. You do not have to please everybody. You do not have to take on every project. An empath is going to really struggle with the ability to say no. So it is crucial for you to understand this starting right now, that saying no is just part of your self-care. So one of the tools that I use to help make decisions is to ask myself whether or not this is a hell yes, because many times it really is that simple. If somebody is asking you something, or if there's an opportunity coming your way and you can't quite figure out whether you want to do it or not, what does your gut say? And really the answer can be as simple as that. If it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. So if somebody is asking you to do something and you're feeling like, oh, but I really wanted to have time to myself this weekend, and I really didn't want to make cupcakes for my friend, or whatever it might be, remember that you can listen to that kickback. That is not a hell yes. That is going to cause you stress on one way or another. And it is okay to be a little bit selfish with your boundaries and with your time, and to honor what you need, and ultimately to build the life that you want to have. So definitely, the more resistance you're feeling about this, the more important it is for you to work on it. So that is your next assignment, my empath friend, is to start to learn how to say no. Okay, my 4th tip for coping with being an empath is to start to work on your boundaries. Boundaries are actually a huge topic. I actually did a podcast about this pretty recently. I can leave a link for that in the show notes. But boundaries are an essential part of everybody's life. Again, though, it's not like anyone took you aside in school and told you, hey, you need to start thinking about your boundaries. You need to understand what a boundary is and how to communicate a boundary and enforce a boundary. Nobody did that. So basically, we have a world of adults, some of whom know where their boundaries are and many of which don't. So if you were like me and up to a certain point, you had no idea where your boundaries were, this is your time. Again, a boundary is just a safe container for you. This isn't about us controlling other people. It isn't about us micromanaging anybody, but this is about us protecting ourselves and protecting our energy. At the end of the day, you will probably have very few hard, fast boundaries and you will have a lot more preferences. But unless you start to ask yourself what the boundaries are and start to notice what your boundaries are, then you're never going to really figure it out. And if you don't figure it out, those boundaries are going to keep getting violated. However, it is not up to other people to psychically know where your boundaries are. This is work that you need to do. This is something you need to figure out and ultimately to communicate to the appropriate people in your world. Again, this is a huge topic and I will probably do a whole other video on boundaries. But if you need something in the meantime, if this is resonating, again, I will leave a link for my podcast episode in the show notes. Tip number 5 for coping with being an empath. This would be taking a moment to step back for a second and reevaluate your current relationships. Basically, to really start thinking about where your energy and time and attention is going. So if you have had flimsy boundaries, which most empaths do, and if you have been busy doing things for other people, solving other people's problems, being that person who's always giving, then you might have created a few toxic situations in your world. And for one thing, that is totally okay. It's always important to remember that there aren't toxic people. There definitely are toxic dynamics. So in many situations, all we really need to do is to start asserting our boundaries, start taking our time back, start saying no to the things we really don't want to do. However, when it comes to relationships, especially to relationships you've had for a long time, this can be difficult, A, for us to do, and B, for the other person to wrap their head around. Of course, this other person has gone a really long time treating you a certain way, probably thinking of you in a certain way. So once you start to reaffirm who you are and what you need in this world, they might push back a little, and that's just to be expected. So I just want you to start becoming aware of where your energy might be leaking in a way that is unhealthy for you. Where are you spending your time? Who are you spending your time with? If there's anywhere that it is not really a good match anymore, or it has gone into a toxic dynamic, it is just really important for you to start to become aware of that. Again, the longer we've been in a relationship, the harder it might be for us to even notice this because we just think this is the way it is. So this is my invitation to you, my empath friends. It is time to reassess, reevaluate, and then you are going to have to take action probably in one way or another to either reestablish boundaries in this relationship in a new way, or perhaps to remove yourself a little bit or put down some time boundaries so that you can start to protect yourself. In any case though, it is really crucial for you to do this because I really think the empath stuff, our personal relationships, is where it all goes a little bit sideways. So it's time for you to reassess, reevaluate, and take action where you need to. Okay, my 6th and final coping tip for empaths today is to simply start to learn how to prioritize yourself. Again, this might be a foreign concept. If you have spent a lot of your life being the caregiver, being somebody who prides themselves on taking care of your family, your boyfriend, your friends, whoever it is, you might not be very good at understanding what you even need. So what I am just giving you permission today, starting now, to do is to start listening to yourself and to start actually taking your needs seriously. The thing is, when we put someone else first and we continue to put other people first, that also means we are automatically putting ourselves last. And that is not a good way to go through life. The analogy that I always like to make with this is that we love to be givers. We love to be helpers. But if we are a cup and we are continually pouring out water to help other people, eventually our cup is going to be dry and there's going to be nothing left to give people. So if you can learn how to really prioritize self-care, to really prioritize alone time, being in nature, doing any of the typical self-care things, going to yoga, meditating, taking a bubble bath, whatever you want, whatever feels good to you, you are going to be able to replenish your energy and continually have energy to give in a safe way. But, you know, again, it is not up to other people to notice when we're getting run down. Nobody's going to look at us and say, oh, you must be exhausted. You shouldn't be taking on all this extra stuff right now. The empath usually only figures that out when they start to hit the bottom, and that is such a bad feeling for everybody involved. So let's avoid you from going there. Let's avoid you feeling drained and burned out. Let's prioritize you feeling good, because ultimately when you feel good, you are a better person yourself. You are able to accomplish more of what you want in this life, and you are going to be a better resource and a better person to help those around you. This isn't just about you. Self-care is not selfish. So please, if you have never done this before, start making it a priority now, even if it's just 1 hour of good time a week. Do something for you, preferably every day, but do something for you and make it a regular practice. To wrap things up again, I would just really like to remind you that being an empath is such a gift. This is something that not everybody has, and this can really give you an advantage in so many ways in your life, just as long as you know how to put your boundaries up and to have self-care so that you don't let it drain you. You can use your empathy skills, of course you probably are already, in your relationships, in your romantic relationships, but also don't be afraid to flaunt those skills in the workplace. So understanding how people work, understanding the needs of people, being able to get into somebody's brain, that could really come in handy in so many different ways in the professional world, thinking things like advertising or marketing. So really don't be afraid to highlight that you have this incredible ability. Again, it is a gift. It has its darkness, but I believe this has been given to us for a reason. I think everything in life is given to us for a reason. All of this stuff is just here to help us grow. And yes, even being an empath is ultimately here to help us grow. So personally, it helps me to think of this as a spiritual assignment. And that's why doing all this work, the boundary work, the energy work, taking care of myself, that becomes a spiritual assignment in itself. And that helps me to become my best self, which in turn helps the world become its best, most realized self as well. So I hope that that inspires you to take really good care of you and to really start to take those tips to heart, to set the boundaries, to take the time for yourself, to do what you need to do to be your very best. Welcome to the Club of Empaths, my friend. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I sincerely hope that you got something out of this training. If you liked this, please do me a favor, give me a like. If you know somebody that could use this message, please go ahead and pass it along to them. I would really love your help in growing my YouTube community here. If you are an empath and you are thinking about starting a business, or maybe you are an empath who's already started a business, I am currently taking on coaching clients for my business coaching because empaths need a little bit of extra help, not only in their personal life, but also in the business world. So if this is resonating with you, if you are a coach, if you are a healer, if you are a light worker and you're an empath who's kind of having a rocky start to the whole online business thing, then you will want to come over and send in an application. I would love to work with you one-on-one in a 6-month container to help you grow your business. If you're interested in learning more about that, I'm going to leave a link for that in the show notes as well. And other than that, I'm wishing you all an amazing, loving, self-loving week. Thank you again so much for being here, and I will see you back in the next one.